Frank Skinner, the first 20 minutes was all about the Andrew Sachs affair. Was it the right thing to do?
Definitely. Because one thing a comedian can't have is an elephant in the room, and if there is one, he has to grab it by the genitals immediately. I would have thought that the only argument against it was a technical one. I think he had a crock of gold there, because everyone was waiting to see what he was going to say about it. And I thought he could have made us wait a bit longer, a bit more suspense management. I mean, what I thought was a terrible error was that the support act talked about it as well, and you don't let the support act have that moment. So I would have held it back. But I found it very exhilarating hearing a public figure talking about something, because often public figures don't want to talk about scandals they've been involved in, and he wallowed in it.
But yeah, well, he wallowed in it, but he also said it was naughty what I did, like a kind of kid. Do you think it was funny?
Well, I think he's a comic genius, and I also think he's a complete idiot. I think his life story, his autobiography, is the funniest autobiography I've ever read. And millions of people will never read it because it's called My Bookie Book. I mean, would you read a book called My Bookie Book? And I thought his genius and his stupidity were really on display here. I thought it was unfunny. What they did to that old man, humiliating that old man, it was unfunny in the first place. It was a pure old pathetic thing to do. And to have this guy, who I think is a very clever, brilliant comic genius, come on stage and then build the first half of the show around that, to me it was, just my spirits sank. I mean, your spirits sink when you're in Reading anyway, but then to have the... and in the second half, when he was talking about being washed by Helen Mirren, and a confrontation with a Jamaican taxi driver, and he goes off on this madcap riff about a Daily Mail journalist describing his home in Hollywood as rented. It's rented. It's only rented. And just like capturing like the snidery and the petty spite of journalism.
It is all about... It's not a stand-up comic in the sense he doesn't mind other material. He minds himself, so he's got to be extreme, yeah?
Yeah, I think he does, but I agree with Frank. It's structurally... I mean, we saw at the very start of the tour, and I imagine it will be excellent by the end. But the show that we saw, I think, was still quite in the process of being made. But absolutely would make much more sense. There are two focuses, or perhaps I want to say foci, to this show. And one is having called George W. a retarded cowboy, I think, at the VMA Awards last year. And the other is Saxgate, as it is ever known now. And they are two very... He's at his best, I think, deconstructing his own press, reading his own death threats and things like that. He's always done brilliantly well. To be honest, the stuff where he talks about the cab driver who's being a bit grumpy and so he goes a bit cockney, the fact that there's always a homeless person next to a cash point. I've been watching comedians do those routines for probably 10 or 15 years now. He does them better than most, but they are dull.
But the other stuff is going to be so dynamic, because it's so controversial. True. It's hard to put ordinary stand-up, not that he ever does what I'd call ordinary stand-up, right next to it.
But it would be better to do a shorter show, I think.
I don't agree, Tony, that he did. I don't think he was doing stuff about that phone call. He was doing stuff about the response to that phone call, which is a very different...
Yeah, but it wasn't funny. It was like just, I was on News at 10, isn't that? He also makes you complicit.
I thought it was like when Lenny Bruce read those court transcripts on stage from his... I mean, it was something really...
Well, that was really important.
You were really in the moment, I thought.
But when he repeated the stuff that's all on YouTube now about the song, he's clearly very...
Oh, that's my favourite moment in the entire show, by some distance, is at no point does he really kind of take on board the criticism of him. He basically rubbishes it, which he does brilliantly, and it is funny. But what's clearly rankled since that week is that nobody said, do you know what, you did an awfully good job of making it. And loads of people wrote at the time, oh, clearly the whole thing was previously planned because no one could have made that song.
I mean, I can see, you two are comedians, and I can see how it's great material. I can see how it's fantastic material that you've got to use. My objection to it was it made the audience complicit in this kind of... you meant to chuckle...
They were shouting out,
you meant to chuckle along with, Jonathan Ross's man boobs, jiggering with smug satisfaction. And I don't want to be complicit in it. I thought it was horrible. I want to be... I think it was at the heart of it, you got a couple of middle-aged guys leaving offensive messages to this little old man. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And it's not funny. It's not funny.
He never said that it was okay.
No, he never said it was okay, but what he did was he used it relentlessly during the show. And as you say, with those big controversies, everything else seemed a bit
I think it's a tragedy that he thinks it's the most interesting thing about him,
I don't think he was tame. I think, take all this away, I think it's important to remember that Russell Brand is a brilliant stand-up comedian. I mean, he is. He's great. His use of language is fantastic. I mean, he did this thing about internet pornography when he said it's like following the white rabbit into the dark labyrinth of internet porn. And I love that kind of... He's very poetic. And he's funny. He's really funny. And he uses things we all wanted to hear him talk about that. It's absolutely... He's in the middle. You know, when he talking about the ego excitement of being on the news and being inside his door with the paparazzi outside thinking, what shall I wear? And that bit when he's going, I am the news, I am the news. I mean, that...
I thought at the end of it, he seemed a little surprised. I don't know how many, you know, I mean, that they were fans. You know, women love him, young women love him. You know, people there that are really devoted to him. And, yeah, I felt the audience response was a bit muted. That at the end, it seemed as though, you know, he couldn't quite believe there wasn't a standing ovation.
We've just about a minute on this, and I just want to say the impact on broader comedy after as it were, the Saxgate affair. I mean, do you have a concern that there's going to be a kind of, you know, the commissioners, the broadcasters, there's definitely a taming of the comedy?
I do worry about it because, to be honest, I think comedy is too tame already. I went to see Sue Perkins do the Hugh Weldon lecture on Monday, talking about comedy being at a crossroads. She's absolutely right. If we try and make everything inoffensive, what we'll end up with is nothing being funny. We need to be able to be offensive and then say sorry, honestly and sincerely, when we get the boundaries wrong.
Well, Frank, you're doing a panorama Monday night, and you've also altered your own
act. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah.
No, I think it's absolutely in your territory, isn't it? It's about what? Taste and decency. You've changed your whole act.
I did. I changed my... I tried taking the swearing out, but not for moral reasons. Technically, I wanted to see what difference it made. And the bits where I thought it needed to go back, it went back. But it was all about... It was just like I was worried, am I swearing too much? In the way I would worry about a footballer saying, obviously, at the end of every sentence. It was not, I think swearing is bad.
It was only because you wanted to see if you could do it without swearing.
I wanted to... It was very technical.
Can you do it without swearing?
One can do it without swearing, but why, if swearing in certain instances works? But it's very much a case of less is more with swearing. So what I did was, when the swear words that came back in went better than they ever did. And as long as the laughs get bigger, I'll try any kind of language messing about.
Well, that's Monday nights at Panorama. Russell Brand's UK tour continues until the 28th of February, and you can catch Sue Perkins' lecture on BBC iPlayer.